Time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
We had to get into these schools, and we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
Guess what? The 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution and everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals. And we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
Folks, what you're watching is a trailer from the movie documentary, The Voice of John. I'm Sam Lesante. Thanks for joining us today, folks. We have the producers and director of Voice of John, what it means, what it's all about. It's interesting, folks. I highly advise that you go to our website. This is on 24/7. Anywhere in the world you could watch it. It's going to be an interesting show, and we're going to be talking about facts today. My guest, Don Gallade, who is a producer, and Marianne Lawhon, who is the executive producer, and Chris Pizer, who is the director of this documentary, Voice of John. Well, Don, Marianne, and Chris, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
I applaud the three of you for what you're doing. It's an interesting thing, and it's always an interesting subject that causes sometimes a little controversy. But tell me about The Voice of John. What's it all about, Don?
Well, The Voice of John actually took a life of its own. It started off as many years ago, we started collecting footage to do a documentary on the March for Life specifically. And as we were putting this together, the Lord just led us in a different direction. And actually, Marianne can tell her story because it's a very, very intricate part of it. So I'd like to have her talk about who John is and how this came to be.
Marianne, before I get to you, Don, one of the things that we talk about, and sometimes when people talk about God, the Lord, prayers, but yet they'll pick up a Playboy magazine and read it anywhere. So that's tell you how the scruples and morality of a life is going today. Unfortunately, there are some people are God-fearing people. And when we talk about, you've been a major supporter of pro-life many, many years, okay? Why?
Well, it started, actually when my wife was pregnant with our first child, and he'll be 18 in a couple of weeks. So we were in St. Gabe's Church, and there was a cartoon caricature kind of thing talking about partial birth abortion, and we were naive young adults who couldn't even believe this thing even happened. And as we were trying to find a group that we can plug into thinking where we need to fix this, that's where we actually met Marianne. So we've met Marianne many years ago, and basically from there, Pennsylvanians for Human Life has been just an integral part of who we are.
So at that point in time, you saw the value of life, okay? Okay, now we come to Marianne. Marianne, how are you? I'm
very good, Sam.
That's
how
good.
are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Great.
Nobody's complaining. We're talking about a subject that we've talked many times about, and it's always an interesting thing. We're talking about how did you get involved with this pro-life movement? Okay, what was first of all, who John is, and why is it The Voice of John, and how you got involved with this?
Okay, well, I actually remember being in my Volkswagen car with the little flowers on it when I heard Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. And it struck me as something very wrong. I realized this was the first time our country passed legislation that somehow didn't jive with those 10 basic commandments. Mm-hmm. And, thou shalt not steal, and, if you steal, you go to jail, and thou shalt not kill. And But suddenly it was okay to kill the child within the womb. I knew in my soul it was wrong. I didn't like it, but I didn't realize that I had to act on it. Or what could I do? You know, the government just said it's legal to kill the child within the womb. It was some years later. I was a young nurse. I'm working at the University of West Virginia Medical Center, and it was my first day on their obstetrical unit. And I had a little clipboard. I wanted to do everything just right, and I went and I checked the labor room. Everything looked good. I checked the delivery room, the postpartum room, and I went into the dirty utility room, Sam. And there, on a stainless steel dirty counter, was a child. I immediately turned around. I went for help, and there was doctors and nurses. We were sitting around having our coffee before the shift would start, and they said, "Oh no, that's an abortion." Now, in my mind, I was thinking a spontaneous abortion or miscarriage. That would be a medical term. And I went back, as I'm walking back thinking, I was sure I heard a sound. I was sure I saw that child move. And I looked again, I went back again. I said, "This baby is alive." And with a little more anger in his voice, "It's an abortion, let it go." And suddenly, it just clicked. This is what Roe versus Wade was about. It sanctioned the killing of human life. I went back into the room. I took a little blanket that was there, a receiving blanket that you might use if the mother wanted the child, and I wrapped the baby, and I took water that was in there, and I just poured it over his head, and I said, "I baptize you, John, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." And I stayed there, and I held this child, trying to figure what can I do. But I said one thing to him, which almost became a mantra through my life. I looked at him and I said, "John, if your mom could see you the way I see you right now, she would not have done this to you." And I repeated that to him. And I guess those words were the purpose that God had as he had me meet John and John come into my heart, that I would go out and teach the message of forgiveness that was the purpose of John's life. Your mom would not have done it. And so you begin educating women. And I came to the Hazleton area maybe a year or two later. It was really like post-traumatic stress that I had. I could feel John's little hand on my finger sometimes. I would always hear that little sound. And I got involved with St. Gabriel's pro-life group. Monsignor Purcell was there. He heard my story. He said, "You don't belong just in a church group. You're going to be preaching to the choir. You got to get out there." And so I joined with PHL. We have our Hazleton chapter. And initially I did education. I did a lot of support work with women in crisis pregnancy, which I still do. And it was 2 years ago that we developed the movie, The Voice of John.
Folks, I'm talking to Don Gallade, Marianne Lahan, and Chris Pizer, producer and director of this Voice of John. We're going to come back and talk to Marianne about women's health issues. The critical thing here, folks, is, and I've been saying this from day one, some people don't even talk to me today because I think that an unborn baby should be allowed to live. And because I stand on pro-life and what it means. We have all this health care, we have all this great educational system, but if you don't have any children to teach them and give them health care, what good is it? We come back, it's going to get a little bit more serious, folks, and some of you are going to get a little upset at what we have to talk about, so stay with us. Thanks for staying with us, folks. Sam Lesante here, and my website is ssptv.com. My email, sam@ssptv.com. Write it down because I know I'm going to get some emails on this. 50 million babies have died and countless women have suffered since 1973 from unborn babies that have been aborted. Okay, Marianne Lawhon is a registered nurse, and she is co-producer of, or executive producer of The Voice of John. Now, Marianne, here's the typical thing that you hear all the time. You know, I talk to some staunch people who are, I love when they say to me, Sam, I want you to know I'm pro-life, but they'll vote for the person who wants to fund money to give abortions. That's always the hypocritical thing. But let's talk about women's health care, because this is what, don't you tell me what to do with my body, okay? And this is what all the politicians, the Clintons, the Obamas, they all come out and say, well, you don't let them tell you how to run your life. They want to run your life, okay? What do you say to those women?
You know, I'm going to make it very clear. I consider myself a pro-life feminist. I have looked at women's issues since I was a young teen, enthralled with Susan B. Anthony and Alice Paul and the suffragettes and what they did to promote women being able to go to the polls and vote. I believe in equal pay for equal work and the opportunity for women to advance within the workplace. So be clear that I know what women's issues are and how to stand up for women's issues. When I take a firm and solid and unwavering pro-life position, I am pro-woman. Let me tell you, Sam, that what happens to women in abortion clinics across this country, look at our own state of Pennsylvania, at Herman Gottzel's clinic in Philadelphia, a woman dead. We have women dying in these clinics across our country from abortion. Even if a woman comes out of that abortion clinic alive, look at the increase in depression, in alcoholism, drug abuse, sexual promiscuity in those women who have opted for abortion.
You don't hear about that, though, Marianne.
No, you don't hear about that.
Yeah.
And they're trying to continuously, in legislative issues, keep women from understanding what they're doing. If I went for a CAT scan, I have to sign that I know every complication, including death. You know, you have to know every single thing. What pro-lifers are trying to advance into legislation is that women have a right to know, A, what will happen to our body, and B, what does the child within the womb look like? I don't want to hear Planned Parenthood's a blob of pregnancy tissue or POC, the product of conception. We will remove the POC. That doesn't click. That doesn't mean anything to a woman. I want to take the baby in your womb, or listen to your baby's heartbeat.
Yeah, you'll never see this. You'll never see a 2020 or Dateline or CBS 60 Minutes do a special on women who have had abortions in their lives. You'll never see that because you have the liberal world out there telling you. You have Michelle Obama who was upset when they did away with partial birth abortion. And I remember when Dr. Polidera showed us what partial birth abortion is. Now she's out there campaigning for Wolf, okay? We have, Clinton coming in and telling women, don't let them take your rights away, okay? And yet they're funding, Wolf said, I'm going to fund, he's pro-choice, and he's going to be funding, if he has an opportunity, I would assume, as a governor, and I'm sure he's a nice person. He has children himself. How you could say and he's in a classroom with kids. How do you say I'm all for getting rid of these kids? If people searched what the process of a human being, I like when the politicians say to me, and we have our fun and serious matters on election days, when Sammy, it's only one issue. It's only one issue. What about health care? What about education? So I use this scenario. I'm running for governor, Sam Lesante, but I'm pro-choice. However, I'm going to go to Wilkes-Barre now, and I'm going to give them $1 million so they can kill more babies, Planned Parenthood. But before I get there, I'm going to stop in Cunningham, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to give the food pantry $5,000 donation. Then when I go to Mountaintop, I'm going to stop at a nursing home, and I'm going to give them $10,000 because I'm for health care. And before I get into Wilkes-Barre, I'm going to stop at a high school and give them money because I'm for education. But then I'm going to give $1 million to Planned Parenthood to kill them. Now, if Jesus was alive today, walking the face of the earth, who would he vote for? Sam Lesante, who did all those good things but killed $1 million, or give him $1 million? See, so when they say it's only one issue to me, Marianne and Chris and Don, I get frustrated Because seniors, watch out, seniors, because when you're no longer valuable in this life, they're going to do away with your life,
Absolutely.
okay? Then it hits home, okay? And you know what, Marianne? This is not a Democrat-Republican thing. It's a people thing.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I really object strongly because I have been politically active since my teens, really. I have become a political activist. And let me say, I am very aware of the ecology and the war that's going on, our economy. We are not single-issue voters, but we prioritize our issues. And if you don't have life, then liberty or the pursuit of happiness, what does that matter? Life is where it begins. It is sanctity of life. It is a womb to tomb issue. You're very right. If you lose the sacredness of life in the womb, then you lose the
everything.
sacredness
Chris,
of life.
I mean, you speak a lot on the show. Chris, what was your involvement and why are you involved? You have 3 children, right?
Right.
Yeah. Why did you become so involved, Chris?
And you know, I probably always considered myself pro-life because to me, I just can't see
Normal. Yeah.
You know, it just seems right that you would leave babies live.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was until I heard the whole process of partial birth abortion explained. I heard it over the radio. It was during an election time. And I literally had to pull over the car because I couldn't believe that this could actually be something that someone would rip apart a baby inside what should be the safest place in the world. And having been blessed with 3 children and have been in the delivery room for all 3 of those babies come into this world, to think of that, I just couldn't
We're a
fathom
selfish
where that's
nation. We're a greedy nation. We're a selfish nation. And people want to say to us, what's going on in this world today? Before I go to break, Bishop Bambera, folks, Bishop Bambera, all you Catholics out there, you know, the Catholics who say they're pro-life, but they'll vote for the people who want to give more money to kill babies. Here's what he said. Respect for the dignity of every human being must be upheld, even when such a posture places us in opposition to popular values, political expediency, and the tide of today's evolving cultural norms. You know, that's what gets people upset. See, if I was a Republican and I was pro-choice, I'd be wrong. If I'm Democrat and I'm pro-choice, it's wrong. But people get upset when they say it's only one issue. Is it one issue, folks? Is it really one issue? 50 million unborn babies destroyed. Marianne sees a child laying on the shelf, dying. President Obama, when he was senator, said he enforced that. Michelle Obama, yeah, I'm picking on the Obamas. Michelle Obama said she was upset when they did away with partial birth abortion. Google it. Tom Wolfe is running pro-choice. I'm pro-choice. Okay, that means it's okay to abort. Look it up, Google it. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. My email, sam@ssptv.com, and we're talking about the voice of John today. It has to do with pro-life. When you make a conscious decision to take a life, you lose part of your soul. How many people will go out there and support people who are giving money to Planned Parenthood and still would think it's okay? It's okay to do that. The Voice of John, let's see how that one issue spreads. First of all, voiceofjohn.org if you want to go and participate.
The thing is, the film talks about the abortion industry. But more importantly, Sam, there are people out there that have had issues, that have had experiences, and God forgives. So this is a message
Absolutely.
of hope. This is a message of, you know, if you've had these things happen in your life, this shows you how the blood of Christ is there for everybody. And it's not just wagging our fingers at people. So we encourage people, they can watch the film for free on the website, number one. But the thing that's exciting from this is what's spun off of the Voice of John. Number one, there's what we call the educational version, which is a stripped down version where it's shorter and able by Chris's amazing talents to be able to fit into one classroom time setting so that it can be used in classrooms. It can be used in Catholic education. God willing, it can be used in public education and even in churches and Bible studies. So we encourage people to look into that version. The next thing is Marianne has, we started an actual show with Marianne called A Matter of Life. We're broadcasted live last year from the March for Life. We're going to do it again this year. We have a partnership with your station to carry that. And we're actually broadcasting from the March live with some of the same people that we're blessed to work with in this film. So God's moving, okay? And yes, this is a horrible, horrible thing that needs to go away, but the baby, one baby at a time. You know, a little quick story, a little girl goes to the ocean and she's pulling these starfish that have washed up on the shore, and some guy said, you can't save them all. She says, yes, but I can save this one.
Yeah.
I could save this one. And one baby at a time, one baby at a time, one soul at a time.
We've had people on the show who had abortions. You know, Marianne. Interesting story about the one girl that when we had the show with Polidoro way back, I was called out. My secretary said, there's a girl out here who has a baby, and she says, you're responsible for this baby. And I went out there, of course, nervous and so, what's this all about? And she had this little baby, okay, beautiful little baby. She said, hold this baby. I held the baby. And she said, Mr. Lesante, you're responsible for that baby. I said, what do you mean? She said, I was watching the show when you had Marianne and Dr. Polidoro on, and I was scheduled for an abortion the next day. Planned Parenthood had this, don't worry about it, everything's going to be fine. She said, I was scheduled for an abortion the other day.
Wonderful.
Okay? She said, and I saw that show, and here is the result of that show, okay?
Awesome.
Here is this little baby that they wanted me to kill, okay? They wanted me to kill. So how can anyone in their just mind go out and support anybody in political office, as Bishop Bamberry didn't say, but he said sometimes there's political consequences. Just for the power and the greed of having a Republican or a Democrat, just for power and greed, and pat yourself on the back and say, you see, we got all these Democrats, they voted, but we're pro-life. Well, you just killed more babies. Or all these Republicans, and it's not a Democrat. Check the issues.
It's not a Democrat, Republican.
Right.
Exactly.
It's right
We
and wrong.
have to look at every issue. And you know, I beg people, I beg them. I think of little John, like I said, I can still feel his little hand. And you know what happened? After he died, they sever the hand and the arm, and they put it in paraffin or formaldehyde for a period of time. And I think that little tiny hand, it can never press that lever.
The good news is you have.
You need to do it, and you and all of you need to press that lever.
The good
Pro-life.
news is that you have a saint up there looking down on you.
Thank
you. Know
you,
that you have a
my
saint
little
that's
John.
looking down on you. And you know, we wonder why the world is falling apart and what's happening. Ned Darty says it all the time. You know, if you don't have a faith, if you don't get back to your faith, the Blessed Mother statue had tears, real human tears, when they had passed this in 1973.
Right.
When
Yes.
and the Blessed Mother, okay, and how much more? We have all the hypocrisy today. We're for this, but we're going to do it. I mean, how much hypocrisy is?
Let me just put a perspective on this for you. 50 million. That's more people than have died in every single military conflict that has ever taken place on the United States soil, including the conflicts where men died overseas. So 50 million. We've wiped out the entire generation that's supposed to be here paying in for the Social Security for the people right now that are worried about Social Security not being here.
You know, Donald, I just scratch my head like you do, Chris. You know, when and listen, I pray for President Obama every night. He's in my prayers because I think they all need our prayers. And you're right; those people who had abortions, they need help, and they need as much help. I'm a sinner. There's no question about it. But what's going on in this country today, and we see them putting these people in office, and the hypocrisy we see. I'm for this, but they'll do this. Okay, and we want to hit senior citizens. When you have a stroke and you're no longer, and they say, your mother's gone. Oh, wait. Well, that's killing a life, okay? Well, if you have no respect for before you're born, why have respect now? voiceofjohn.org. And folks, if you could help them out financially, they certainly need the help to keep it going. It's voiceofjohn.org. And if you could help them out, it would be appreciative. My email, sam@ssptv.com. I've offered this opportunity to Planned Parenthood anytime. Come on this show, sit here. I won't say I'll just welcome you. You could talk for 29, 27, whatever minutes you want. Tell me why it's okay to kill those unborn babies. You just tell me why. Tell our viewers, because I have people out there saying, hey, you're picking on Planned Parenthood. You're darn right I'm picking on Planned Parenthood. They're out there supporting this poor girl had this baby. She was told it was okay to abort it. Look what I was going to get rid of, Mr. Lesante, this beautiful little baby. See you next time.